Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, where we just discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and of course what we all know is an aging population today. So we've had so many great guests on the Aging Boomers, and thank you all for your wonderful comments and support. So many of you have gone onto iTunes and subscribed, gone on to iHeartRadio and subscribed, and so many of you have downloaded our free app on your iPhone or Android phones. And if you haven't, you can do so. Just type in the Aging Boomers, and you'll get up to date on all of our ongoing podcasts. So again, thank you so much for all your support with that. And I just wanted to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority. Senior Care Authority is a professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of professionals to help in determining the right path for seniors in receiving proper care and supervision. So whether it's in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, you can talk and meet with a senior care advisor in your area. You could just call 888-809-1231, or you can go to www.seniorcareauthority.com. And I'm very excited about, I'm always excited about our guests, but especially today, someone that I've known for several years, and her name is Karen Van Dyke. Karen is really an entrepreneur, kind of a serial entrepreneur like me a little bit, but she has been in the senior care industry, owns a few different companies. Actually, one is Senior Care by Design, which is also a senior placement agency in the San Diego area, where she turns housing concerns into living situations and helping seniors and their families find the right place for them to live and receive proper care. She also has elder care resources in San Diego. You could go to ecrsandiego.com and learn more about that organization and all the resources it provides. But what we're going to talk about today is something that she began back in May of 2013. It's a death cafe. Don't turn off your this interview. This is going to be very interesting to you. The Death Cafe. Death Cafes are a community service that she has been creating for people in the San Diego area, as I say, since 2013. So we're going to learn more about this growing concept. So Karen, first of all, welcome to the Aging Boomers.
Thank you so much, Frank, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I guess the simple question to start with, to tell our listeners, what's a Death Cafe?
Yeah. Hopefully no one has hung up and they're all listening to what the death cafes are, because I will tell you that a lot of times when I even mention the death cafe, people's face gets a little white and their eyes get a little crossed, but as soon as I tell them what it's about, the color returns to their face and they start to get very engaged. And a death cafe is a place where people drink tea, eat cake, and discuss death. The aim is to increase awareness of death, to help people make the most of their finite lives, and all of our lives are finite. And so having that discussion about death, which is very much a discussion that never takes place, we do live in a country that's pretty death-phobic. Our culture is death-phobic. And so people don't really talk about that end of life and what's going on and what their experiences have been. And this is an open forum discussion. It is not therapy. It is not a grief therapy group. It is totally about the general public getting together. Oftentimes it's strangers sitting at your table. And within minutes of starting a discussion on this, people are excited. There's laughter, believe it or not, most of the time, laughter happening in the death cafes. And it's magical. It's a very magical experience for people to attend. So I've been doing this in San Diego since, as you said, May of 2013 for just about over a year and a half now, and it's been It's taken off, and I'm part of a global movement of death cafes. So just a little history about how it originated. John Underwood is the originator of the death cafes. He modeled it after Bernard Kravatz out of Switzerland, who was a sociologist, and he created Café Mortals. And so John took it another step further, and I don't think really realized what he was creating until all of a sudden, within 6 months, it was spreading across the world. And so death cafes, the next person actually, I need to mention this, to bring it to the U.S. in September of 2012 was Lizzie Miles. And Lizzie Miles is out in Columbus, Ohio, and so that's where death cafes gave birth in the U.S. Then I started doing them, as I said, in May of 2013, and it's been a remarkable experience for me. And every death cafe, I thought after a while it wouldn't have the magic, and not only does it have the magic, it has more now. So it's really a remarkable experience for people to attend, especially for me.
So what are the types of things that are discussed? Are they talking about preparing for death? Is it someone who has gone there because maybe they've lost a loved one and dealing with it? Who do you suggest even attend a death cafe?
Well, I could start with, if you're going to die, you should attend. That's what I'll start with. But some of the questions that are asked, what we do is we come in as a group, and usually in the death cafes that I do, there's usually between 25 and 35 folks. I try to cap it because I think that there's a level of intimacy that takes place within the smaller groups, and if you get too large of a group, you start to kind of lose that intimacy. So I like to keep the intimacy in the groups. So we take the larger groups, and then we break into smaller groups of 4 and 5. And as they're sitting around the tables, there are conversation starters. And some of the conversation starters would be something like, have you ever had a pet die? And what did you do? And all of us that have owned pets have had pets that have died. And it's such a incredible experience to go through that with a pet, because they're just full of love. And losing a pet is very traumatic. Just as losing a relative in your life is very traumatic. So the conversations that take place are experiences that people have had. There might be another conversation starter that would ask, so how do you want to die? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? And if so, where do you want to be buried? And have you told anybody this? So usually when they're sitting at the table, they'll pull a question out and they'll start with that question. But what I have found over and over and over again is what happens is that the people sitting at the table are sharing stories, and it's a very circuitous route in the conversation, and things come up that evolve from the original question. The person that should attend a death cafe, I do advise that it's 18 and older. And anybody that has a curiosity, has had death in their own lives, have had experiences that they wish they hadn't had, or that they wished had been different. And in these conversations with really the people that quickly become your friend in these groups, the conversation gets very supportive. And at the end of the death cafe, most of the people are hugging each other. So anybody that's going to die should come. 18 plus older are the folks that should attend. Anybody, anyone. I think I've had 18-year-olds, and I had up to 92-year-olds attend. Anybody in between.
Wow.
So it's wonderful.
So, is there anybody there? Any professional people, if people are having, challenges with this, or it's not that type of a thing? When I say professionals, I'm talking, psychiatrists, psychologists, anything like that. People there kind of monitoring it, or doesn't work that way?
Good question. Not really a monitored situation. It really is self-guided. I think out of the 20-plus death cafes that I've done, I've never had anybody that has really needed professional help. However, every single death cafe has had somebody there that has been a professional, but it's not because we want them there to monitor the group. It's there because they're curious, just like anybody else. We have people from all areas of the end-of-life industry that come, and I've had whole families come together, mothers, daughters, grandmothers, aunts, all come together. But it's not, no one has ever really had an issue with the topic itself and the way that it's discussed. It is an agendaless topic. We don't push any one way of thinking. We don't have religious agenda. We don't have ideologies. We are truly agendaless. That doesn't mean, though, that people don't come with their agendas. Actually, that's the beauty of it. People come with their agendas, and they share those agendas, and sometimes, yes, they do share them with a lot of fervor. But the agenda that is shared may be an agenda that you've never heard about before. I think one of my most fascinating smaller groups that I was in at one of my death cafes, I had someone who was a Buddhist, I had a Catholic, I had someone who was a Muslim, I had someone who was Jewish, and then there was me, who I call interspiritual. And it was the most fascinating conversation I have ever had. And actually the person that was the most fascinating, and within that group, all of them were, but the atheist was also in the group, and they had this way of looking at life and death in a way that I've never even thought of before. And so that's the beauty of bringing all of this richness of these individuals together and knowing that you're sharing a very intimate topic that people really connect quickly and are eager to share their stories and their agendas. But we don't push any one thing. It's an open forum. And when there are folks there from hospice, I've got a lot of questions. Well, how do you what's a pulse? I never even heard of a pulse. What's a DNR? It's wonderful because when we finish the smaller groups, we'll then return to the larger group, and then each of the tables, we go around and we share what has happened and what took place and what was really a big aha or something that really stood out to you. And within that part of the conversation of the group, if someone does have a question about pulse and what that means and how you fill it out, then if someone from hospice is there, I ask them to speak to it, because people are looking for resources. And now that they've learned this information, it's like, well, I want to know more about it. But the real value of the Death Cafe comes in the fact that the ice is broken on the topic. I recently was listening to NPR, and they were interviewing an author, and the author wrote about The Last Acts of Kindness, which is a wonderful book. And as the interviewer was asking, okay, we're at the end of our time here, let me ask you, what should people do? What should people do to get started? And she was giving folks, the listeners, all kinds of ways in which to get started. But here's where I see the Death Cafe come in. The Death Cafe comes in before you get started, because one of the reasons you're not getting started is because the topic is in the closet and you don't know anything about it. And quite frankly, there's a lot of fear around it. So when you sit and you're sitting in these groups and everybody's talking about their relationship with death or their experiences with death, it starts to melt that ice. It starts to create a space where people can really get in relationship with death. Because we know that death is coming, but we acknowledge it in a way that we think we are immortal.
Right.
And so when we acknowledge that death is coming and we have this finite life, then we start to think about life and what we're going to be doing differently. So the Death Cafe, I think, is the very first step that
Yeah.
someone should take.
Speaking about death, I want to make sure your phone's not dying. I'm hearing some beeping every once in a while, so I don't know if that's your phone or ours. Are you hearing that?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. All right. As long as your phone's okay, we'll deal with it. Every once in a while, we're hearing a little beep. So, so would you say that most people that come are coming to learn more as it relates to themselves or a family member? Are you sometimes seeing members of families coming together because maybe someone is in a situation where they're close to dying and families trying to deal with it? What do you see more?
I see more of people who just have a curiosity and have learned about the death cafes. It's a tremendous word of mouth, letting people know by word of mouth. Tremendous. Families have come. I had one person that attended 5 death cafes in a row. And when she was at that 5th death cafe at the end, she raised her hand and she said, I want you to know what I have done with my family since I attended my very first death cafe. She said, last weekend, my family sat down. I called them all together, sat down with my husband, my kids, their spouses, and we talked about our will. We talked about what we wanted. We talked about how we wanted to be buried, where we wanted to be buried. And she said, the reason that I was able to do that is because I got over the fear of that topic because of the conversations I've had at the Death Cafe. And within the Death Cafes, it gave me the words to use so that I could have a conversation that was inclusive with my family. So yes, families come. She did not come with her family, but it gave her the ability to have that conversation with them. And that is the end. That is hopefully the end result, that people do start talking about it in a way that it is part of living. It is part of life. Others that come are much older, and they're closer to that time in their life. I had a gentleman call me one time and say, gee, I'm not that close to the death cafe that you're having. Would you come and do a death cafe where I live? And I said, well, sure, I will talk to you about that, but, tell me what's going on. He said, I'm 79 years old, and no one will talk to me about death, and I really want to, and I need to. So it seems like there's this whole population of our elders who are in that space where no one talks to them about it. It's some kind of little secret. Yet they are very desirous of talking to someone, a family member, friend, or a stranger, as they do in the death cafes.
Being in the business, both of us. I mean, you've been in the business. I've been in the business of senior care. We always tell people to plan. They need to. You talked about a pulse form. We don't have to get into the details of that, but I'm sure they could learn more if they want to contact you on that. But whether it's estate planning, whether it's pulsed, the various forms, and also to talk to your family so they understand wishes not only about if their parent or other loved one would die, but it's if they end up needing care later in life and what their wishes are. So we're always talking about planning, and I hear so often from actually the seniors themselves saying they go to talk to my kids about it, and these are their adults, their kids. They go, Dad or Mom, you're not going anywhere. Don't worry, don't worry. You're going to be fine. We don't have to talk about it. And you get that. So are you finding that that's a discussion topic? I find that that's certainly a needed one. Is that type of topic that is discussed?
I'm so with you. I mean, one of the reasons why I personally started the Death Cafe in San Diego was because in my placement business, when I would do assessments with families and, talk to them about what they have in place, what they don't have in place, most of the time they didn't have those things in place that you just talked about. And I realized that if they didn't have those things in place, that actually helping them to find housing is going to be more challenging because they haven't had those conversations. And so that very situation is what triggered me into thinking, well, I should get out there and I should start educating the public. The following week, after having that thought, someone actually up in Sonoma from your neck of the woods sent me an email saying, hey, look at this thing called a Death Cafe. I think you should do them. And 2 months later, I was doing them. But it was for that very reason that you just said, that families don't have this conversation, and the adult kids exactly say, oh, don't worry about it. We don't need to talk about that now. We'll talk about it later. And later doesn't come. The conversation doesn't come.
Or it's
and it
too late.
Clearly is.
Yeah, right.
It's clearly a situation of they're very uncomfortable and don't even know how to broach it.
Yeah. So that leads me to the next question. Just like someone had talked to you about, getting involved. If someone wanted to learn more about if there's a death cafe in their particular area, is there a site that they could go to learn more? I guess that's part one of the question. And part two, you might have somebody like yourself who's interested in actually running a death cafe in their area. How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So first of all, you would go to deathcafe.com, and in there you will find guidelines. And you read through the guidelines and you agree to the guidelines. The guidelines are pretty simple, yet there is certain things that you need to do in order to create a death cafe. And if you wanted to learn about where the death cafes are, again, go to the two things. One, you can go to the deathcafe.com and put in your zip code, and it will show you all the death cafes that are around your area. The second way is I have a Facebook page, which is Death Cafe San Diego, so facebook.com, Death Cafe San Diego, and I post things on there all the time about different, all the death cafes that I do. I have a lot of things going through that Facebook page that are about the latest thing that's going on in the end-of-life industry, some curious things that start to make you think about different things. So that the Facebook page is also another way to connect with the death cafes and actually doing one. And I'm happy to always give feedback to anybody that's considering becoming a host. And they can contact me at deathcafesd, S as in Sam, D as in David, at gmail.com. And I'm happy to connect with them and share all the ways in which I've learned how to do a death cafe that I think is really the best. I definitely, after all this time doing them, have down the best practices. So I would love to help anybody that would want to. But Death Cafe, by the way, one of the long-term goals for John Underwood, the creator of the Death Cafe, was to actually create a brick-and-mortar Death Cafe in London, and that is now in the works. So it's a cafe that you'll be able to go to in London and have a cuppa and have some cake and talk about death and whatever else life brings into the conversation.
So where do you hold them now? Do you hold them at your home? Where do you hold them?
They've been, let's see, I've held them in restaurants. I've held them in memorial parks. I've held them in country clubs. Held them in, that pretty much sums up where you can hold them pretty much anywhere that people are going to have at least a semi-private area. And preferably, lots of libraries are holding them now in San Diego, lots of libraries. But the semi-private or private area, I think, is important for a couple of different reasons. For the obvious reason of the topic itself and the sacredness of that topic, but also because, honestly, the level of the volume of voices is amazing as the folks start talking about this topic. It gets really high. And so you will have folks that come that will be older and maybe a little hard of hearing or having a hearing challenge. And so you want to be sure that you're creating the environment so that it really is conducive to a great outcome. So, but they've been held in a lot of different places. There's a gal up in LA that's a host, and she does them in people's homes.
Wow.
So people that are in her deaf cafes usually have about 8 to 12 people. Mine usually have 25 to 35. Lots of different ways to create what you want to do with how the deaf cafes unfold in your area.
Great. Well, it's fascinating. And thank you so much, Karen, for joining us on the Aging Boomers. I could talk to y'all for a lot longer on this, but unfortunately we're out of time. But maybe you could just tell people again, how would they get a hold of you if they want to learn more about the Deaf Cafe or any of your other organizations that we mentioned earlier? How would they do that?
Yeah, actually seniorcarebydesign.com is my website. And if you'd like to know more about the Deaf Cafe, you can go to deafcafesd@gmail.com and call me, 619-985-7297. I would love to talk with you.
Great. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in. And again, you could get to our podcast, go to agingboomers.com, download it on your iPhone or Android phone, or go to iHeartRadio or iTunes, all different places to listen. So thanks again for all your support. Be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.